Hello, welcome to a crash course on time efficiency and productivity. The purpose of this is to give you some tips that you can do on how to avoid distractions and get more things done in a limited amount of time. First of all, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am Jim Troth. I am the owner of a home inspection company here in Central Ohio. It's called Habitation Investigation. We do termite, gas line, inspection all throughout Central Ohio. But approximately a year and a half, 2 years ago, I decided I wanted to grow the business beyond just myself. And I was a single person operation. I did all the inspections, the reports, the marketing. Time was very limited. And there are some things that I've done the last year or so to grow the business. And it actually doubled the business, actually 99% over a time that I recorded, while the Columbus market grew by approximately 22%. So definitely a lot of verifiable proof that things I have done and have learned are definitely helping out. But what I'm going to start with is talk about the body. Your body has circadian rhythms, and what this is your natural pattern of where you're awake and you're asleep. That's the overall pattern of your body. But what a lot of people don't know is you also have something called ultradian rhythms. And what this is where you can have an hour and a half, 2 hours of focused work and activity, and then your body kind of slows down for a little bit, usually at least 20 minutes. So this is like how 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a lot of people tend to really have a slump in energy level. That is part of your ultradian rhythm. And this is just natural patterns in the body. You can't do a whole lot to change them, but it's very helpful to be aware of them. Now, as far as getting things done, it's important that you know that the things that you're doing are important. And I don't know who the person was, but somebody termed the major things as being big rocks. And there is an example I've heard where a professor took a glass, he put big rock, put a couple of large rocks, actual stones in a glass, filled it, but yet there's still gaps in there for everything else. So he could still put in some smaller rocks, would still fit inside the cracks, and then inside those little tiny cracks, he could fit in some sand, even smaller, which symbolizes even smaller details. And then even after that, after the big rocks, the small ones, and then sand, he could still pour in a little bit of water. However, if he did that operation backwards, where he filled he filled the glass first with sand or water, there would have been no room for those big rocks to fit in there. So when you're prioritizing your activities, you need to do whatever your big activities, your big goals. Those are the things you need to focus on first. Now, regarding frequency, I believe it's very important. What you do every day is more important than what you do just every now and then. Because anybody can maybe focus 8 hours straight in one day and really try and get some work done. It's not going to be the most effective use of their time because 8 hours is too long of a stretch of time for your mind to stay focused. Instead, if you did an hour, hour and a half of focus time every single day, not only will you end up having a lot more done during that time period by the end of the week, but your time is going to be more productive. Because in an hour and a half, you can stay focused and not get distracted. You try and do an 8 hour straight marathon session, that is not going to be very effective for you, and you're going to have a lot of distractions, and it's not going to be as productive as you had hoped. Now, regarding multitasking, years ago, it was really highly looked upon that a person was a multitasker because they would claim to be able to get multiple things done within a certain time period. Truly multitasking is not time efficient, nor is it very productive as a result, because what you're doing is your focus time on one project, and then you have to stop, switch to another project, and then stop, switch your mind over back to the original project, or maybe to a third project. But every time you're switching, you're losing about 40% of your time because your brain has to stop, turn off, reorient itself to this new task before it starts getting productive again, getting things done there. So there have been studies. There is a 40% decline in productivity if you are switching from task to task to task. So regarded as something favorable in the past, it is now proved not to be a good thing to do. Instead, you need to chunk your time on one project, get it done, then switch to another single project and get it done. Because every time you're switching, your mind has to stop and delay as it recharges it and reorient itself to another focus. Now, regarding sleep, some people, in an attempt to get more done, will start waking up 2 hours earlier and use that extra time to get the work done. Yeah, that can work a little bit. Long term, no. Only about 1 in 40 can actually get by on a little amount of sleep. What you need to do is, if you're trying to get up early, a little bit earlier in the morning, go to bed earlier. You need to make certain you are getting your 7.5 to 8 hours sleep, whatever your body requires. Something you're going to want to do is find the time and space for your focus time. And what I do is every week, sometimes twice a week, I have certain times of the day and the week that I block off to work on projects. Typically Friday morning, there's a 2 hour block of time where I am working on a project or I have conference calls which are involved on those projects that I'm working on. Now, I find that early morning is the best time for me to do my focus time because during that time, our kids aren't real little anymore, but when they're awake, they can still make some noise. They can be a disruption and asking for things. But in the morning, nobody is expecting a phone call from me. If somebody sends me an email, they're not expecting a response from it. There are just very, very few, if any, interruptions early in the morning. For some people, it may work out that the best time for them is in the evening after everybody's gone to bed. Or maybe there's a time here in the middle of the afternoon where everybody's gone. Whatever works for you and you can be consistent at, go ahead and do that. Now, something else you're going to want to do is remove temptations to help yourself focus on your task. Some of the biggest temptations nowadays is definitely Facebook, emails, kids, of course. But your willpower, your ability to focus, it's limited. So if you're having to avoid clicking on that Facebook tab that you see up in the corner of your screen on your computer, that's going to kind of wear down your willpower to avoid that temptation. So just completely close it out, hide it, so where you can't see it at all. So remove those temptations. Now, something that's going to develop as a result of your doing these things is you will form habits, and these habits come from behavioral chains. Like you get up, brush your teeth, you get your coffee, you sit down in a certain corner of your desk, your computer's on. There's just a whole series of things that go on that one happens right after the other. And these behavioral chains will form the triggers because then you'll eventually go, oh, now it's time to do this automatically because you've done everything up to that point in time of getting ready is there. For example, Stephen King, he always has a cup of tea one certain corner of his desk. I understand it. And that is one of his habits and his triggers that helps keep him focused on what he is doing. Now, email and your Facebook, it's like random. It's random reinforcement. It's like gambling. gambling, slot machine. It's random when you get the reward. And when you get the reward, it's very enjoyable. I understand. So Facebook is like that also. Sometimes you'll click on something that's really something funny that brings you some joy, and sometimes it's not. And those are habits that are hard to break. There's a lot of people who have gambling addictions. I think a lot of people nowadays have Facebook addictions, but it's not really deemed as anything really destructive. But it will diminish your productivity and your time efficiency. Like I said, it does take energy to resist temptation, and it does weaken throughout the day. A lot of people, they start diets, and they can do very well with those diets in the beginning of the day, all throughout the day. But when it comes toward the evening, when the willpower and resistance to temptation is weakened, that's when they will start failing and start uh, not eating the food that they should. Like I said earlier, the ultradian rhythms, they last about 90 to 120 minutes. When you're doing your focus time, you want to focus on that time period, 90 to 120 minutes. It may you may not be able to focus 2 hours right in the very beginning, but you'll get there. But what you do your focus time for however long as you can, 90 90 minutes maybe. Then you take a break and do 20 minutes of some activity that is not exactly mindless, but it's an activity that does not require you to have a whole lot of focus and mental energy. So do your focus time, 20-minute, easy activity. Then you can go back to your 90 to 120 minute of focus time if you need that. Now, if you're say you're doing a project of writing a book, journals, whatever you're doing, you write an article. Often your progress is not visible because if it's on the computer, you're gonna shut the computer off if you won't see it. So consider making some kind of a check sheet or some kind of chart uh, showing you, so you have a way of recording and verifying that you are making progress. Some people find that very helpful to see that they're actually progressing towards something. So consider making one of those for yourself. Now, what I want you to do is to help get things started. I need you to establish yourself a place for your focused work. Turn off your Facebook and emails. Use that time for the big rock, which is your big projects. If you have trouble finding out what your big projects are, um, you can ask yourself a question. And that question is, what thing, if you were to do it, that it would make everything so much easier if it was when it was accomplished, and perhaps even accomplish one thing would make everything else either easier or maybe even to the point where you wouldn't even need to do some other projects. So if you have a task that you can do that would make everything else tons easier, that's your big rock. That's something you should do. If you have trouble knowing what your big things should be, um, ask a mentor that works in your profession. They can help you select what is going to be most important for you to do. Now you need to schedule your time uh, for your focus time. Something I've done, I learned this from a coach of mine, Mike Crow, is the 2 week calendar. And what the 2 week calendar is, it's just like I said, it's a 2 week calendar. But on that calendar, one of the first things you do is you block out your focus time. You put that immediately on the calendar. That way, nothing can interrupt that. And then you put in your other important tasks, like in appointments, meetings, whatever they are. But the first thing that goes in your 2 week calendar is your focus time, because nothing should ruin your focus time or any of your money making activities. If you're a real estate agent or some other kind of sales, prospecting is probably the most important thing to do. So you put that on your calendar, and do not let anything interrupt you and take you away from that. And once you have that on the calendar, if somebody contacts you to do some activity, something that may not be the best thing for you in your career, You can honestly say, I'm sorry that time is blocked out. However, I have these time slots available. Which one do you prefer? But you do not interrupt your focus time. That is very important. And like I said, you need to do the 60 and 90 minutes without interruption and then shift back to some kind of mindless activity to help prevent exhaustion and distractions on your mind. Well, that is it. That is the short and down and dirty class on time efficiency and productivity. These things really will help you get a lot more done because you'll be able to avoid distractions. I encourage you to do something early in the morning or late at night to avoid any of the distractions because typically nobody else is awake during some of these times. And I'm not talking getting up 3 o'clock in the morning to get things done. A lot of people think 6 to 7 is a good time. I get up at 5:30 in the morning typically. Get started at 6 to 7:30, and to me that works out pretty well. All right, that is it. If you have any questions, please contact me. I'd be glad to meet or talk to any of you regarding your goals and what you want to do to increase your productivity. Thank you. Bye bye.